Chapter 6 focuses solely on intellectual disabilities.
This module provides a brief summary of what an intellectual disability is. An intellectual disability is a disability characterized by significant limitations in both intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior, which covers many everyday social and practical skills. This disability originates before the age of 18. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates that approximately 3% or 6.5 million of civilian, non-institutionalized adults had ID in 2010. Intellectual functioning, also called intelligence, refers to general mental capacity, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, and so on. It coexists with strengths. One way to measure intellectual functioning is an IQ test. Generally, an IQ test score of around 70 or as high as 75 indicates a limitation in intellectual functioning. Adaptive behavior is the collection of conceptual, social, and practical skills that are learned and performed by people in their everyday lives. Conceptual skills include language and literacy, money, time, and number concepts, and self-direction. Social skills include interpersonal skills, social responsibility, self-esteem, gullibility, naivete, social problem solving, and the ability to follow rules and obey laws, and to avoid being victimized. Practical skills include activities of daily living or personal care, occupational skills, health care, travel and transportation, schedules and routines, safety, use of money, use of the telephone. Standardized tests can also determine limitations in adaptive behavior. People with intellectual disabilities are your neighbors, coworkers, or fellow students, friends, and family members. Changes in policy over the last decades has meant that the overwhelming majority of people with intellectual disabilities live in the community, on their own, with their families or friends. What is important to them is what is important to everyone, living a healthy and meaningful community life.
So feel free to unmute your mics at this point and share with not only with me, but also your classmates, your experience with working with any individual who has had a diagnosed intellectual disability. And just so you know, the autism spectrum disorder does fall under the umbrella of intellectual disabilities. When it comes to teaching students with intellectual disabilities or IDs, you always, as we've already discussed during week 1, where we talked about the least restrictive environment, that would be the core academic curriculum. That is the same education, the same curriculum, the same programs that his or her peers are experiencing. So if they're in 10th grade, then they are also, expected to meet the same demands with accommodations, of course, for the 10th grade art curriculum, math curriculum, science curriculum, so on and so forth. When it comes to individuals with ID, sometimes functional academics is better suited for them. So now they're just learning the basics. And in some cases I've read where basically that's like the 3rd or 4th grade education level. And depending on the student's abilities, they could of course go on and achieve a high school diploma, a college degree, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the basic academic skills, these are the individuals similar to my son who you kind of know from the very beginning, or at least by the time they enter into middle school, that high school diploma is not something that's a possibility. So we just need to focus on the basic reading skills, basic writing, especially their signature, because you want to give all students that opportunity to feel independent and be independent, in math. And then of course this is all being taught in real life or community activities. Then you also have life skills curriculum, which people like my son also engage in. So there they're learning those practical skills that they need in order to live and work independently. And in some cases, similar to my son, they will always have to have someone there to provide oversight, to make sure they remain safe, to make sure no one takes advantage of them if they're in Trader Joe's and they give them a 10 and they're expected to get change of $1.20. Well, they may not know that, and everybody's not nice and honest. So these are just different things that have to be taken into consideration. Then there's transition programming, which is available for individuals with these types of disabilities, and it basically is, as I've said many weeks now, self-explanatory. This is the programming that goes with the student and is applied to the student when they're transitioning from, say, for instance, elementary to middle school, middle to high school to college, or maybe to a work program. It's just a way to help ease the transition. And so you put strategies and processes in place to help diminish the impact of that transition on the person who has a disability. Now, when it comes to strategies for working with students with disabilities, I love the CBI approach, and CBI stands for community-based instruction. I love it because it gives students an opportunity to practice everything that they're learning in the classroom right in the community, thus community-based instruction. So if they're learning counting money, they may turn around and take that money and maybe pull out a flyer for the grocery store, and they say, okay, we've got this much money per student within our groups in our class, so what can we go and do at Trader Joe's? They make a list, and these are things that my son, when he attended Pacific Beach Middle School, engaged in, and it was probably one of the more fulfilling 2 years of his education experience, because they were actively doing things, and every day had a task that basically fed into the weekly goal, the Friday goal, which was to cook and in the classroom. So they, from the very beginning, they would do recycling, and then from there they would go over to the recycling center that was within walking distance of the school. They would engage in street safety. So that means, going up to the post and pushing the button, waiting to hear the correct sound, knowing when to walk, when not to walk, paying attention to, their surroundings, just taking it all in and taking advantage of the opportunities in the community. For the most part, students who attended Pacific Beach Middle School lived in the area of Pacific Beach, and the school had great relationships with some of the businesses in the area, like the recycling center. So it was already scheduled. I'm going to say Miss Johnson is the teacher. Miss Johnson would take her class along with the paraprofessionals, and they would go over, so the students are experiencing what it's like to not only recycle in the on school grounds, but also go over to the recycling center, get money back, understand when they get back to the classroom, this is how we're going to count the money. Let's look in the circular. Let's decide as a class, what are we going to cook on Friday? And they're getting all these opportunities to engage with not only the community but also their peers, and they get the opportunity to work on whatever their behavior management plan is in their IEP, as well as the academic skills. And to be honest, these are things that would benefit even students who do not have intellectual disabilities and have never truly experienced doing that on their own. So CBI is something that I believe benefits everyone. And so here is a video sharing, I believe they're either middle school or high schoolers, their experience of CBI.
I work at Petco now, and I really like Petco. I had an 8-week internship, wanted to hire me for permanent.
Stephanie especially has been great with us, helping assist us to run a business. I do recommend that any business owner get into this program.
Jordan is a student who has lower academic ability, yet he has a gift for bringing joy to others. And so by assigning him Medford Care, he's able to utilize that gift and bring much happiness to many residents. They have requested him there, and he actually works there 2 days a week.
Community-based instruction programs makes the future brighter for our students because they gain confidence, they gain independent skills and security, and they're ready to face what the next challenge is going to be. They feel prepared because they've been in the community. So I think by giving them that experience while they're at the end of their high school career, better prepares them for their future.
Community-based instruction is a type of instruction that happens in the community rather than in the school building. For many students, community-based instruction is necessary because it helps them figure out how to navigate the real world instead of just the school building.
They rely on us to sort of show them how to interact, and we go through all the basics, social skills, to just interacting in the community, to getting the correct change. It's almost every aspect of just daily learning.
Overall, the social and behavioral skills that they're developing are even more important than the specific work task, because that may change at every location where they work, but the social behavioral skills will follow them throughout their lives.
What has to work for our students is for them to have real experiences. We've had students be very successful with money skills in a classroom, and when they've gone out into the store, not know what to do, because the question is, can they do it in different sites with different people, different money situations? You really need to generalize the skills across settings, across people and across circumstances. And to do that, you really need to get into the community and see what poses the problems for each individual student.
3, 4, 5.
It's 5, and how much do you need?
6.
6.
When schools begin to set up a community-based instruction program, a program development plan is needed. Schools are set up to deliver instruction inside a classroom, inside the school building.
You've never been, this will be your first time?
Getting out in the community requires careful planning. I encourage schools to start with the easy steps.
I'm sure you speak a lot.
Maybe a shopping trip, maybe a visit to an employer to see what types of things are going on there. But start easy and start small.
This shelf is me.
There are a number of different things that schools need to consider when they set up CBI programs. The first of those is getting community-based instruction into students' IEPs. Second thing to consider is scheduling. When will the student be able to go out in the community? Third thing to consider is transportation. How will the student get out? The fourth thing to consider is who's going to go out with the students. Who are the educators who will be taking students out, and do they have the necessary skills to educate when out in the community?
Looks like you found them. I think a key ingredient to the success of a CBI or SLE program is having such a great team to work with. I think you have to have teachers, paraprofessionals, job coaches, parents, administrators, all involved in the same goal and the same purpose, then getting out into the community and getting the community to accept CBI program that you're developing.
With community-based instruction, there are some common challenges that schools run into. Those include budgeting, because community-based instruction may have some budgetary implications in terms of transportation or staffing. Another of those challenges is opening doors within the community. Community-based instruction is often community development as much as it's instruction. We need to have partners in the community who are willing to work with us.
What works best for me going out into the community is going out there and cold calling and going into the businesses and introducing our program and kind of giving them little profiles of the students that we have and trying to match the right student to the right business. Most businesses embrace this and they want to continue to help us. So we have grown from, I think when I first started, we had like 20 businesses to now we're at 50 different sites that we work at.
We are thrilled to be part of this program. We were asked about 2 years ago to be part of the program and have the kids working in the store, and it's been a great success and a joy for us to do this program.
I've had a student at the grocery store who is now employed part-time a couple nights a week. We've had a student at the senior center asked back to volunteer on a more regular basis. We had a student at the YMCA work in the child care department. That translated into employment in the daycare for her upon graduation. We've had a student at Petco who really did well feeding the fish. That student now works there part-time as well.
The community has been wonderful. All the feedback we have gotten has been positive. I get phone calls from parents. I get emails from places of business that they are so happy to see the students out in and about the community, learning the skills that they need to be able to live a fulfilling lifestyle.
There are a number of key ingredients for community-based instruction. The first is leadership. Leadership is needed for any type of system change or development. Another of the key ingredients needed for community-based instruction involves skilled educators. It's important that good educators be able to deliver instruction out in the community.
How do we go into the round table?
The best educators who work in community instruction are flexible and willing to change their instructional styles to each individual community site.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen next. More stuff. Yeah.
They have just as many like skills and gifts to provide as anybody else, and I think that's the fun part while working with them, to figure out where they best match. You know, what kind of job that matches their skills and as well as their interests, because when they're interested in something, the students really tend to do a lot better.
There's so many advantages to doing community-based instruction. We can try to replicate community experiences for the students in the school, but it is not the same. The students may master a skill in school, and once we bring it out into the community, we realize that they haven't mastered the skill at all. They've only mastered it in that setting. In order to generalize their skills, it is absolutely imperative that we bring them into the community, into the setting where the skills will be needed so that they can practice there. And that is the true test of mastery.
Good. Independence is important to everyone. To be able to do things on your own, I think, really helps you feel complete, boosts your self-esteem, helps you feel happy.
We know that our time with students is precious. We need to make every single moment count. If we teach out in the community, that is the most efficient way to address the generalization. The students can learn in the real settings and therefore be more likely to maintain those skills post-school.
When they graduate, we want them to have all the skills they need. We want to know 100% that we prepare them for most things that they might experience in life. And if we just teach in the vacuum of a classroom, we can't ensure that.
So let's pause really quick here, and I'm interested in hearing what strategies you saw play out in CBI. And when I say strategies, I'm talking about the direct instruction. What types of ways did they possibly differentiate the training that went into these young adults doing their positions? So let's just pause here really quickly. So some other simple strategies that are very helpful for students with intellectual disabilities includes working in small groups. Remember in the, chapter 5, I shared how sometimes, maybe a counselor, or it could be a paraprofessional, it could be the teacher, will sit with just one student or maybe a small group of students to focus on maybe a strategy or a skill to help bring that group, in this case 3 or 4 students, up to the same level or as close to possible level of their general education peers. Teaching one concept or skill at a time. So if you're doing something, if it's a life skill and it's spreading peanut butter on bread, you're not going to sit there and just throw a whole bunch of things and be like, okay, well, we know we need our knife and we need the peanut butter, we need the bread. It's like, no, we need to look at everything at a step-by-step process, little by little, to make sure the student is not only linking them, but also understanding what to do with each step. And that leads into the other strategy here, teaching steps or strategies for learning. So you want to make sure it's sequenced properly, maybe even giving them pictures of a process. It could be painting a fence, which is a common one that I have seen in the past, where you know, there may be a picture of the little girl and she's already, you know, she's standing in front of a fence that's already been painted red. But then there may be another picture and there may be only half the fence is painted. And then there may be another where, you know, it may just show her standing there with the paintbrush. So you want the students to understand the sequencing of the information, what obviously comes first, but and then what ends up being the goal, which is going to be that last piece. You always want to give all students, including those with IDs, plenty of opportunities to practice because you want them to master the content. You want them to master the skill. You want them to master the chore that goes along with the job. So that way they can be successful, and that plays into the student's self-esteem and their ability to not only repeat that behavior, but also possibly reach out and try other behaviors because they have been so successful with this particular new skill. Use prompts to promote correct responding. This could be modeling, this could be physical guidance. You could maybe even, you know, hover over a certain area of the text if they're having a hard time pinpointing exactly the information. You may, you know, hover your finger over the first paragraph, or you may say, you know, direct them toward the bottom of page 3 for the answer. So you're not necessarily telling them the answer is, you know, blue, but it's like you're leading them in that direction. And then you always want to teach skills that are meaningful and those that can be practiced often, not only in the classroom setting, but just like in the video, she mentioned, you know, the ability for the students to generalize. And she didn't use the term generalization, but basically that's what it was. You know, not just learning it at Burger King and mastering it at Burger King, but also being able to take those same skills and apply them at school and at home and in the community. That shows that the student not only understands it, but is able to generalize that skill. So to wrap up, IDs must, to be diagnosed, they must have something going on that impacts 2 or more areas of their life. The adaptive behavior should be age appropriate and situation appropriate. You always want to chunk information depending on, of course, the student's ability, and give the students more opportunities to practice and always generalize the information. One way to see if a student is able to truly understand a concept, and this is for all children, regardless of abilities, is to have them explain it or teach it to someone else in the classroom. So that way they have to feel confident enough to step in and be like, yes, I'm able to teach, you know, my classmate Sally how to butter toast, but not only be able to produce buttered toast, but walk Sally through it as well. And so in some cases, students will start off this skill by simply, you know, hey, I've got a piece of bread, you get a piece of bread, you do what I do. And then they're basically reinforcing their understanding by doing. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I do it all the time. It's like, instead of me just telling you or just showing you, how about we do it together? And that way you basically address any concerns, misconceptions right there in the midst of the process. And lastly, you can engage up to 4 different curriculum throughout their life. I personally love community-based instruction. I also understand that it does require schools to have healthy relationships with people in the with businesses in the community. Also, a supportive leadership from the school, as well as executive leadership at the school district level. Um, and that basically sums up intellectual disabilities.